I want to point out that your choice to address this issue right now is not accidental. Your consciousness is currently operating within a cycle that quantum physicists call the observer loop. This cycle occurs when consciousness repeatedly chooses the same possibilities and reproduces the same reality. Even if you are unaware, consciousness makes a choice every moment, and these choices become a life pattern over time. Right now, a break is happening in this pattern. You are perceiving this not with your mind, but as an inner feeling. There are recurring scenes in your life, similar conversations, similar disappointments, events with different people, but with the same emotions. Life seems to move forward, but in reality, it revolves around itself. This feeling is not accidental. It's a signal sent to you by your consciousness. For a while now, you've felt everything repeating itself like a broken record, like hearing the same melody over and over again. That's exactly why you are reading these words right now, because this moment is not an ordinary moment. This is a synchronicity. Your quantum field realized it had been stuck at the same frequency for a long time and began searching for an escape route. The universe responded by guiding you here. Millions of people may be staring at screens right now, but only a certain level of consciousness feels the weight of these words and stops. Your stopping shows that your consciousness is working differently. The quantum field didn't choose you. You already possess the consciousness to interact with that field. We call this the observer effect, where consciousness not only experiences reality, but also actively shapes it. But there's a critical point here. Consciousness is creative when it's free, but when it's locked into the same patterns, it unconsciously transforms its creative power into a prison. This is where the observer loop comes into play. When your consciousness starts choosing the same possibilities from a field of infinite possibilities, it no longer experiences anything new. It reproduces the same reality over and over again. Look honestly at your current life. How many times have you noticed that you're experiencing similar problems with the same kind of people? Are there recurring themes in your relationships, work life, or daily experiences? This isn't bad luck. It's not inadequacy either. This is consciousness getting stuck at a particular frequency. Consciousness perceives what is familiar as safe. Therefore, every morning when you wake up, you unconsciously scan the same thought pathways. You evoke the same emotional responses. You begin the day with the same expectations. It works like a quantum navigation system. Consciousness chooses the paths it has followed before because it recognizes them. But recognition doesn't mean progress. As this cycle deepens, your perception of time begins to change. Daily moments seem to stretch on, while weeks and months pass in the blink of an eye. Time seems to flow by without a real sense of progress. This is one of the clearest signs that consciousness is revolving between the same patterns of probability. Physically, you are moving, but at a conscious level, you are standing still. The people around you may not understand this, because their consciousness is more based on linear time and predictable outcomes. For them, life works through a cause and effect chain. But you have always felt that reality is much more flexible. You have experienced moments that are sometimes brief, sometimes profound. Moments when time stands still, everything gains meaning, and synchronicities rapidly follow one another. These experiences weren't accidental for you. In fact, this awareness isn't new to you. Your soul has long been preparing for this understanding. The books you've read, the spiritual concepts that interested you, sudden insights, all were signs that brought you here. But now, you are at a critical turning point, because simply recognizing the observer loop isn't enough. Most people make a mistake at this point. They try to solve it mentally. They think that if they understand the mechanism, they will be free. But this is like memorizing a map to a labyrinth and expecting to find the way out. The observer loop works not with thoughts, but with the quality of attention. What you look at, how you look at it, and what state of consciousness you are in are crucial. If your attention is constantly focused on the same things, your consciousness will continue to produce the same reality. Therefore, the patterns you try to escape are reinforced by your observation. But right now, as you listen to or read these words, something very important is happening. Even your awareness of the observer loop is beginning to weaken its effect on you. This is a starting point, because consciousness loses its automaticity. Every challenging relationship you've experienced wasn't a random encounter. Each came to show you the frequencies your consciousness automatically operates at. Quantum mirrors come with unpleasant emotions because consciousness manifests itself most clearly in resistance. People who angered, hurt, or made you feel worthless were actually revealing observation patterns you unconsciously nurtured. That's why you've experienced the same cycle over and over with some people. Different faces, different stories, but the same result. Because consciousness produces echoes to recognize itself. Change doesn't begin with changing the people around you. Change begins the moment you become aware of the frequency you're observing. You're realizing this now. What you've experienced so far wasn't a process of failure. This was the most intense stage of consciousness training. Your consciousness had to be able to unravel the observer cycle, not just theoretically, but through experience. Because true freedom comes not from knowledge, but from lived experience with awareness. The reason you experience the same cycle over and over was so you could open the exit door, not with your mind, but with your level of consciousness. Now, you're realizing something. Every time you reacted, you were feeding the cycle. Every identity you defended reinforced the pattern. Every situation where you felt the need to explain yourself showed that the old frequency was still active. But now, a different silence is forming within you. This silence is not passivity. This silence is the activation of witness consciousness. When you begin to witness, reality begins to change. Because observation is no longer automatic. Consciousness becomes aware that it is making a choice for the first time. This is the moment when the observer cycle begins to dissolve. Even if the same events happen again, the same person is no longer within you. And this difference opens the door to completely different possibilities in the quantum field. That's why you may have noticed that you don't react to some things the way you used to. Arguments that used to draw you in now seem meaningless. An inexplicable distance has formed between you and some people. This isn't a break. This is a frequency shift. Your consciousness is now refusing to feed the old reality. Feelings of loneliness may increase during this process. Because as consciousness rises, the resonance around you decreases. Not everyone changes at the same rate. And this doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. On the contrary, it's a sign that you're moving in the right direction. While most people still live by reactions, you are learning to exist through observation. You begin to understand this. You don't need to strive to change reality. It is the observer who changes reality. The same event takes on a completely different meaning in a different consciousness. The same conditions produce different results at a different frequency. You are no longer someone who fights against conditions. You become a consciousness that observes conditions. From this point, small but profound changes begin in your life. People begin to treat you differently, but they don't fully understand why. Opportunities arise without force. Some doors close on their own, while others open effortlessly. This is not a coincidence. This is harmony. When consciousness becomes coherent, the quantum field also gives coherent responses. You no longer demand anything from the universe, because you are not looking from a state of lack. You are influencing the field with what you already are. That's why manifestation accelerates. But this acceleration stems not from an effort to control, but from surrender. Now is the time to realize this. Your old self was not the enemy. It was a temporary structure that brought you to this point. It was built for protection. It was necessary for survival. But now it has completed its function. You don't need to forcibly destroy it. You just need to release it with compassion. Because true transformation happens not through fighting, but through recognition. And now you recognize it. The cycle, the frequency, the patterns, and yourself. This awareness is irreversible. Once seen, consciousness cannot return to its previous state. That's why this message has reached you at this very moment in your journey. Because you are now ready. From now on, the issue is not about acquiring more information. The issue is about allowing yourself to live in accordance with the consciousness you possess. And the moment you do that, reality will begin to follow you. The cycle I experienced 3 years ago was more intense and closed than anything I had ever experienced before. From the outside, my life seemed to be moving forward. Days passed, decisions were made, people came and went. But inside, on a conscious level, nothing changed. The same emotional tone, the same inner monologues, and the same outcomes repeated themselves. During that period, I realized that the observer cycle sometimes creates an illusion of movement. You feel like you're progressing, but in reality, you're vibrating at the same point. The hardest part was being aware of this, but still being unable to free yourself. Consciousness sees, but because it's not yet consistent enough, it can't change direction. This is the stage where most people give up, because here, neither the old reality satisfies, nor is the new reality yet visible. Consciousness is suspended between two timelines. This state of suspension causes the person to feel lost. I experienced this during that period. I could neither escape nor force it, and it was at this point that I realized something. Breaking free from the observer cycle happens not through active movement, but through passive consistency. The more you try to force it, the stronger the cycle becomes, because the power still comes from the old quality of observation. The real break began the moment the need to control diminished. When consciousness first stopped interfering, the field began to reorganize itself. This reorganization happened not through dramatic events, but through quiet changes. My reactions slowed down. My inner monologues became less frequent. The meanings I gave to events dissolved. And this dissolution was the dissolution of identity. That's why the feeling of pressure you're experiencing right now is so important. This pressure isn't an indication that something is wrong, but that the old structure has become unsustainable. When consciousness becomes ready to carry a higher consistency, the old frequencies create tension. This tension arises not to force you, but to make you let go. The distortion of time perception is also part of this, because consciousness doesn't operate with linear time, but with probability density. Time stretches when the same probabilities collapse repeatedly. Time speeds up when new probabilities begin to come into play. What you're feeling right now is a readjustment of reality, not time. It is no coincidence that doubts arise at this stage. Doubt strengthens the discerning muscle of consciousness. Questioning everything is necessary not to hold you back, but to help you see more clearly. Because the difference between true expansion and mental escape can only be understood with this sensitivity. Consciousness matures when it stops confusing every brilliant experience with enlightenment. Your consciousness is now finely tuned enough to break free from old patterns. This is why the waiting period feels so intense. Because your consciousness had to wait for the lock to be opened instead of forcing the door. And this unlocking process can only happen at the right frequency. This is precisely why you chose this incarnation. To recognize, live within, and transcend the observer cycle. This is not an individual story. This is a gateway to the world of collective consciousness. When you experience this process, you define a new possibility not just for yourself, but for the entire field. The energy accumulating within you right now is not to propel you forward, but to center you. When this energy is directed outwards, it creates chaos. When held inside, it produces consistency. Therefore, don't try to draw immediate conclusions. Don't use this as a tool. Just feel it. What's happening in your body is also part of this restructuring. Consciousness is not separate from the body. When the frequency changes, the body adapts. That's why your habits change. You can no longer tolerate some things, and you feel an unexpected openness to others. The most important thing at this stage is to let go of resistance. Resistance is an attempt to cling to the old reality, yet the old reality is already dissolving. What you need to do is be transparent to this dissolution, neither directing, nor accelerating, nor withdrawing. Because what is happening now is not a personal crisis. This is an active stage in the evolution of consciousness, and this stage is only complete when it is recognized. You are aware. That's why you are here. That's why these words sound familiar to you. And that's why there's no turning back now. Herein lies the paradox. While people believe the universe is closed off to them, they fail to realize that what is actually closed off are their own conscious habits. The quantum field never limited you. What limited you was how you learned to interact with it. When your consciousness becomes accustomed to a particular form of interaction, it accepts it as safe and familiar, declaring all other possibilities invisible. Therefore, change doesn't begin with learning a new technique, as most people think. Change begins with ceasing to repeat the same techniques, the same intentions, the same questions over and over again. Because each repetition is a confirmation for consciousness. It's a message. This reality is true. Reproduce it. The universe gives you exactly that. There's a very subtle difference here. Mindfully using attention and letting go of attention are not the same thing. Most people, while thinking they're developing awareness, are actually hardening their attention. A state of consciousness develops that is constantly checking, constantly measuring, constantly seeking results. While this state of consciousness may seem spiritual, it is extremely rigid at the quantum level. However, true fluidity emerges when consciousness isn't locked onto a goal, doesn't force an outcome, and doesn't feel the need for self-validation. At this point, the observer function changes. Consciousness no longer asks, "What's happening?" It shifts to the realm of, "Can I allow this to happen?" This change isn't mental. In fact, the mind often dislikes this and thinks it has lost control. But what is lost isn't control. It's predictability. And this is precisely where the quantum field comes in. Unpredictable consciousness can connect with limitless possibilities. This is why some people experience sudden but natural transformations in their lives. New people enter their lives. Old problems are quietly resolved. Opportunities arise effortlessly. From the outside, it seems like luck. But in reality, this is the result of consciousness no longer ordering the same menu. It must be stated very clearly. Breaking the observer cycle isn't about taking control of your life. Rather, it's about resolving the need for control. Because the need for control is a reflex of a consciousness that cannot trust the unknown. Once trust is established, control naturally disappears. This trust isn't blind surrender. It's a harmony built through experience. Consciousness, in every small moment it can let go, realizes how space supports it. And this awareness creates a new foundation. Now consciousness progresses not by clashing with the universe, but by resonating with it. At this point, the concept of effort also loses its meaning. Effort is a sign of disharmony. When harmony is achieved, action is still there, but there is no friction. There is movement, but no tension. You feel this difference in your body, because the body cannot carry the lie of consciousness. That's why your body constantly gives you signals: tiredness, tension, restlessness, pointless strain. These are not enemies, but indicators. They tell you which mode consciousness is operating in. In sunlight mode, the body relaxes, breathing deepens, time expands, and yes, it's very natural to feel alone at this point, because most people are still living in searchlight mode. They are constantly searching for something, constantly trying to fix something, constantly focusing on the next step. When you stop searching, you realize things start coming to you spontaneously. This difference sets you apart from others, but it doesn't make you superior. It simply places you on a different frequency. And those on the same frequency will find each other sooner or later. It's not a choice, it's a resonance. Just like these words sound familiar to you now. Because you've already reached this threshold, your consciousness can no longer generate the energy needed to maintain old patterns. That's why going back is difficult. That's why old solutions don't work. That's why the feeling that something is changing persists. And that feeling is correct, because you're no longer trying to change reality. You're beginning to recognize consciousness itself as an expression of reality. This is where the observer cycle truly breaks. This sense of urgency is not accidental. nor is it a psychological suggestion. Consciousness is forced to make decisions at certain thresholds. Although the quantum field offers infinite possibilities, not every consciousness can interact with every possibility simultaneously. A path is chosen, and right now, the collective consciousness stands on the threshold of that choice. That's why old narratives no longer work. Explanations that once comforted you now seem empty. Goals that once seemed meaningful now become meaningless. This is not a loss. This is a frequency mismatch. Your consciousness is now refusing to remain in a lower resolution reality. The real transformation begins right here. Because consciousness evolves not when it leaves its comfort zone, but when it leaves its realm of meaning. When what it thought it knew collapses, new layers of perception open up. That's why what you're feeling right now is a mixture of unease and clarity. You feel like the ground is shifting, but at the same time, a wider space is opening up. It is impossible to remain neutral in the quantum field. Neutrality is actually a hidden defense mechanism of old patterns. The consciousness that says, "I choose nothing," often continues to choose what is most familiar. But the field currently does not accept this. The field demands clarity from consciousness. But this clarity is not a mental decision. It is an existential alignment. Therefore, while some people awaken rapidly, others become more rigid just as quickly. The same events can be an awakening for one group while creating fear for others. The same information can liberate some while pushing others into defensiveness. This is not about the content of the information, but about the flexibility of consciousness. This lies at the heart of the global upheavals we are currently experiencing. Systems are not collapsing. The modes of observation are collapsing. People are finding it increasingly difficult to believe the same story. Authorities, ideologies, identities, all can only exist as long as they are observed. When the observation changes, the structure dissolves. And yes, this process is unsettling. Because as the cycle of observation dissolves, consciousness is left in a vacuum for a while. Old meanings disappear. New ones have not yet taken root. This interim phase causes many people to withdraw, because the unknown seems more frightening than known pain. But if you've come this far, it's already difficult to turn back. Because you've now seen the cycle, it's impossible to experience something as it was before. Consciousness, once it becomes aware, cannot fall asleep again. It only resists or expands. Therefore, what is asked of you now is not to do something, not to apply a technique, not to make a decision, not to set a goal. What is asked of you is to allow consciousness to adopt a new stance, a stance of unresponsiveness but fully awakeness, a state of being that is not bound but not indifferent. This state is the essence of coherent uncertainty. You don't know what will happen, but you are not afraid. You don't control, but you are not detached. You don't wait, but you don't rush. This is a state of consciousness that vibrates in rhythm with the creative intelligence of the universe. And when you enter this state, you no longer push reality away. Reality flows towards you. People think you are lucky, but you are not just producing resistance. Instead of resisting what's happening, you let it pass through you. At this point, you must clearly understand this. This path is not for everyone, because this path requires the dissolution of identities. It requires the dissolution of the need to be right, the habit of control, the illusion of security. But this dissolution creates not a loss, but a relief. you no longer need to prove anything. The idea of who you should be dissipates. And for the first time, you come into contact with who you truly are. This contact transcends the observer cycle. And after that, nothing continues as before. Because you are no longer someone observing reality from the outside. You are a consciousness that moves with it, evolves with it. And this is one of the most advanced states that human consciousness has ever reached. Over time, you will notice the following. The difference between what you truly want and what you think you should want will become more pronounced. It will become easier to say no to things that don't fit. Saying yes to exciting opportunities will become natural. Your relationships will transform. Some will deepen, while others will end spontaneously due to a difference in frequency. Synchronicities will increase. The right people will enter your life at the right times. The resources you need will appear exactly when you need them. These are not coincidences. These are the natural consequences of consistency. But the greatest change is internal. You are no longer rowing against the current. You are beginning to feel the supportive current that has always been there. Challenges are not overwhelming, but rather engaging. Uncertainty is not frightening, but rather perceived as a vibrant possibility. And your fundamental emotional state is permanently changing. That is why you are here. That is why this message reached you. That is why you are no longer just a spectator, but an awakened observer. The reason this moment works is because your soul's perception of time has begun to dissolve. The moment you hear these words is a point of convergence where the steps you've taken in the past, the inner struggles you've faced, and the choices you've made unconsciously all intersect at a single point. Your soul knows this intersection is not ordinary. This is a threshold where liberation can no longer be postponed. And the most important difference is this: what you desire isn't just waiting for you, it's calling you back. This isn't an attempt at self-motivation. This isn't a fantasy to convince your mind. This is an existential awareness. Because what you call thinking isn't just a mental process. Thought is a form of interaction at the most fundamental level of quantum mechanics. Every desire that truly touches your soul, every vision that excites you, and every possibility that resonates within you is actually a wave of reality already existing in the quantum field. This wave tends to transform into experienced reality. But this collapse doesn't happen by force. It only occurs under the right conditions of observation. When you're trapped in an observer loop, your attention constantly remains in the frequency band of past experiences and learned limitations. In this state, even the strongest possibilities cannot reach you. Interestingly, the desires that seem most impossible to you are often those with the highest quantum signature in your field. The reason they feel too good to be true isn't because they're imaginary. It's because they're already being experienced on a timeline beyond your current observation patterns. This means that a reality line already exists, where what you perceive as impossible is your natural and ordinary experience. Reaching this line doesn't require a new effort, just a frequency shift. But at this point, a critical distinction emerges that most teachings overlook: the difference between alignment and attraction. attraction attempts to draw what you desire towards you. This approach is based on the assumption that you and your desire are separate entities. Alignment, on the other hand, removes the invisible barriers between you and that experience. The greatest manifestation isn't something coming to you. It's aligning with what already exists. Many teachings unknowingly reinforce the observer loop because it positions desire as a goal to be achieved, which perpetuates the feeling of separation. However, true harmony occurs through a much deeper awareness. This begins when you realize that what you desire is not separate from you, but rather another expression of your consciousness experiencing itself in parallel realities. When this awareness remains merely a mental concept, transformation is limited. But when this knowledge descends into the body, that is, when your nervous system finds this reality safe, the observer cycle begins to dissolve, because there is no longer anything to observe from afar. When separation disappears, observation loses its effect. Therefore, forcing, wanting more, and striving harder distances you from the experience you desire. When every effort stems from a perspective of lack, your consciousness chooses that timeline of lack. When you constantly check whether your desires are being fulfilled, you actually reproduce the distance that separates you from them. The quantum field responds to harmony, not effort. When your attention, intention, and energy signature are aligned on the same frequency, reality spontaneously rearranges itself around this alignment. At this point, you don't need to try to make something happen, because you become the space in which events occur. And this is not a passive state. This is a highly conscious stance. In fact, it's already happening. Right now, as you feel this reality seeping into your cells, a rare convergence is occurring in your quantum field. The gap between you and your highest timeline is closing. This is happening not because you are doing something new, but because you are finally letting go of something. You are letting go of controlling, forcing, and confirming. And it was precisely this act of letting go that was keeping you separate. Therefore, a simple but powerful action is suggested to seal this energetic transition. The single sentence to be written below is not a ritual, it is a signal. I am in alignment with my highest timeline. Without adding anything else, without explanation, because this is not a social interaction. This is an act of establishing a connection at the quantum level between your consciousness and the band of reality you are experiencing. When you write this sentence, you're not just using words. You're signaling your readiness to embody an entirely different reality in the quantum realm. You're declaring that your cycle of observation has dissolved. And with this declaration, your consciousness regains the freedom to choose from among possibilities that were previously invisible to you. The perceptual and intuitive abilities developing within you would have been described as extraordinary by previous generations. But they are not superhuman. They are the natural consequences of awareness, freed from the constraints of cycles of observation. Your intuition sharpens because you now perceive events not after they have happened, but in the process of their formation. This is not psychic prediction. This is quantum alignment, the ability to move in rhythm with the emerging possibilities. This is precisely what we call reality fluidity, the ability of consciousness to naturally transition between different paths of possibility. And yes, literally the capacity to move from one timeline to another. And this capacity is now becoming active. When your quality of observation changes, you feel it not as an abstract awareness, but in the most mundane moments of daily life. Traffic lights turn green as you approach. The parking space you're looking for is exactly where you need it. Conversations throughout the day flow toward the most harmonious outcomes for everyone, without forcing or alienating anyone. These aren't miracles. These are natural side effects of your consciousness moving effortlessly in harmony with reality. Your creative abilities explode at this point because your mind no longer revolves in the narrow circle of repetitive thoughts. Your consciousness no longer has to produce the same ideas, the same solutions, and the same fragments of inspiration over and over again. You begin to receive direct insights from a unified field. Thoughts never before considered enter your mind. Solutions that didn't exist until you became sufficiently conscious suddenly appear as if they were always there. That's why your creative projects come effortlessly. But this ease isn't superficial. On the contrary, you produce work that is far more original, far deeper, and far more impactful than anything you've produced before. People's reactions to you also change. Those who speak with you perceive you as a completely different person. Yet you didn't plan how you would speak to them, nor did you consciously change your behavior. What has changed is that you are no longer unconsciously reproducing the same relationship dynamics. Instead of triggering the other person's automatic patterns, your presence creates space for them to express themselves more authentically. People begin to behave around you with awareness, not habit. This change also resonates in the physical body. Your body begins to transform in ways that seem impossible from a traditional perspective. Chronic illnesses are resolved without the need for special intervention, because your cells no longer have to repeatedly receive the same stress signals. They receive new information. They adapt to new regulations. Your energy level stabilizes at a higher baseline level instead of short-term ups and downs, because you are no longer depleting your life energy by trying to escape repetitive mental and emotional cycles. The observer effect is still present, but it no longer works against you. On the contrary, it begins to work in your favor. Every moment you observe your reality, you automatically choose more balanced and satisfying experiences because your consciousness is guided by harmony, not fear or lack. Your very existence is creating a regulating effect on everything around you. Money and resources begin to flow more easily. This isn't because you've learned better manifestation techniques. It's because you're no longer unconsciously choosing scarcity timelines. When your consciousness isn't constantly trapped in cycles of observation, repeating limiting patterns, it naturally gravitates towards frequencies of abundance. Relationships cease to be challenging because you no longer resonate with people trapped in traditional, sterile, and repetitive relationship patterns. Your social circle transforms spontaneously. Souls ready to transcend their own cycles of observation and expand toward their potential begin to enter your life. The deepest change occurs internally. You stop feeling like you're striving to get somewhere. The idea that you need to be someone disappears. You realize you already are that person, you already are. You were only temporarily trapped in patterns of observation suggesting the opposite. This awareness creates a peace beyond the mind because it stems from direct knowledge, not belief or hope. Consistency is crucial here because consistency is the most powerful creative principle in the universe. It cannot be imitated. It cannot be fabricated. It cannot be manipulated. When your thoughts, feelings, energy signature, and deepest knowledge vibrate at the same frequency, you become a reality creator that the quantum field has no choice but to respond to. This is the ultimate secret that many teachings revolve around, but avoid directly stating. The observation cycle doesn't completely disappear, but what most people miss is this. True alignment isn't about forcing all parts of yourself to be in the same place. True alignment is about ceasing to divide your awareness into multiple timelines at once. Even now, part of your attention may be stuck on your past self. Perhaps a part of you is contemplating future possibilities. And there's only a small part of you that can truly be at peace in this moment. This scattered attention dilutes your consciousness among the discordant paths of reality. The quantum field only offers consistent experiences to coherent consciousnesses. When your awareness is divided into different timelines, mixed results occur. Some areas of your life progress, while others stagnate. Some days feel magical, while others are mundane. This is not the universe testing you. This is a natural consequence of your consciousness not yet being integrated enough to maintain a single higher timeline consistently. True harmony requires a process that mystics call timeline consolidation. This is the process of withdrawing your attention from all parallel versions that do not represent your highest potential. This is not a daydreaming or positive thinking exercise. This is about ceasing to energize the paths of reality that do not serve your evolution. This is literally a dimensional shift. The process of embodiment begins the moment you stop striving for coherence, because at the deepest level of your being, you realize you are already coherent. Your core consciousness was never fragmented. What was fragmented was the direction your attention was directed. Because your attention learned to focus on fragmented experiences, consciousness was perceived as fragmented. When you remember how to return your awareness to its natural and unified state, you understand that coherence is not something created, but rather that you bring forth a state that already exists. Therefore, constant striving, working harder, wanting more, and trying to correct more distances you from coherence. Because with every effort, you assume yourself to be a separate entity from the whole. Every struggle to change your reality unintentionally reproduces separation. The moment you try to obtain what you want, you place it in a place separate from you. This separation creates the distance you are trying to overcome. Harmony arises not from effort, but from relaxation. It arises spontaneously when you allow your consciousness to remember its natural unified state. When this level of consistency is reached, the perception of personal reality begins to dissolve. Life no longer feels like an individual struggle filled with problems to overcome. Instead, it becomes a focal point where the universe experiences itself through you. Life ceases to be a chain of problems to be solved and becomes a vibrant, breathing expression of cosmic creativity. This shift in your identity permanently dissolves observer cycles. because there is no longer a separate self that can be trapped in repetitive patterns. The highest timeline is not a more successful, wealthier, or happier version of your current life. It is an entirely different dimensional experience, a realm where the laws of limitation do not apply. The cause and effect relationships that govern ordinary reality lose their meaning here. When you embrace consistency, you don't strive to improve your circumstances. You transcend the entire framework in which problems and solutions exist. This transformation is currently happening simultaneously across the planet. We are not only breaking our individual observer cycles, we are also transcending the collective matrix of limitations that has governed human consciousness for millennia. Your personal transformation is part of a much larger context than you might imagine. We are in the midst of a species-wide evolutionary leap that is redefining what it means to be human. You are not here by chance. Your consciousness chose to manifest itself precisely at this time, as the Earth emerges from its cycle of freedom. A collective observer cycle that has trapped humanity in the same patterns of conflict, scarcity, and division for millennia is unraveling. Your individual transformation is a vital component in this dimensional shift of the planet. When each individual breaks the observer cycle, they create what quantum field theorists call morphic resonance. This produces a wave that facilitates thousands, even millions, of people making the same leap. You are not just changing your own personal reality. You are creating a new template of possibility in the collective consciousness field that future generations will naturally access. Children born today will grow up with abilities that seem miraculous by current human standards. But this will not happen by chance. This will be possible thanks to pioneers like you breaking old patterns of limitation. You are transforming the patterns of consciousness that would otherwise be passed on to them. Your courage to question the nature of reality is literally changing the course of human evolution. That's why you felt such a strong sense of responsibility lately. That's why you feel such an intense urgency to understand these concepts and embody them not as abstract ideas, but as a lived reality. Your soul made this pact to be part of the first wave of humanity to show what is possible when consciousness moves from consistency, not limitation. You are not merely on a personal quest. You are acting as a bridge between the old paradigm and the new paradigm. The synchronicities that brought you to this message are part of a much larger orchestration encompassing millions of awakening consciousnesses across the planet. We find each other through quantum entanglement. We share insights by accelerating each other's breakthrough process. Understanding these concepts doesn't just benefit you. It empowers the entire evolution of consciousness. This is the deepest point. When you break free from the observer cycle, you don't just transform your own reality. You create openings in our shared field of experience where limitless possibilities can enter. Your liberation becomes the liberation of humanity, because consciousness is inextricably linked at the quantum level. Therefore, resistance to these ideas can sometimes feel very intense. This is not an attempt by the individual ego to maintain familiar patterns, but a realization that the entire limiting matrix has reached its end. Every person who breaks the observer cycle weakens the collective structure that traps humanity in cycles of struggle and separation. Share this message with everyone who resonates with these concepts, not to convince anyone, but to remind them of what they already know, because they already know this at the deepest level. As people remember themselves not as powerless observers, but as conscious co-creators, the process of transcending the limiting patterns that have long defined human experience will accelerate. This transformation is part of something much larger than personal growth or spiritual progress. You are not merely witnessing the birth of a new species, you are an active part of its birth. Towards the birth of a species guided not by fear, but by harmony. Towards the birth of a species born not from a consciousness of separation, but from a consciousness of unity. We're not talking about separation, but about creative collaboration with the universe, about moving in harmony with the flow instead of struggling. If everything I've shared resonates with you, if you feel these words awaken an ancient energy, initiating a vibration deep within your soul, you can now take a simple yet powerful step. If this concept feels familiar and recognizable in your consciousness, simply write one word in the comments below. Consistent. That's all. Add nothing else. This isn't just an ordinary interaction. It's the recording of a statement in your quantum field. When you write this word with true intention, you're not just making a comment. You're recording your consciousness into a frequency band that operates beyond the boundaries of ordinary reality. Each person who uses this statement creates a more powerful, morphic field with their own energy. This field is an energy network that permanently dissolves observer cycles, embodying consistency. We support everyone ready to make this leap. We're not just building a community. We are creating a new reality template that is accelerating the transformation of more and more people who are ready to remember their consciousness. This is the beginning of a collective awakening. What you need to understand is that breaking the observer loop is only the beginning. When your consciousness learns to move from consistency rather than limitation, you gain access to abilities that most people consider impossible. In the next video, I will show you how to develop what we call quantum navigation. This is the ability to consciously switch between different paths of possibility and create results that seem miraculous according to the old paradigm. This ability will help you understand why some people get the impression that everything is going well, that they are living a magical life. While some things go well, others struggle despite all their efforts. This is not about luck, merit, or spiritual practices. This is about conscious interaction with the quantum field, which allows you to choose which timeline you experience moment by moment. This is not theoretical knowledge. This is a mastery that completely changes how you move in reality. However, I can only share advanced concepts with those who have broken free from observer loops and are ready for this transformation. Subscribe now and turn on notifications. Click the bell icon, because the next video contains information you won't find anywhere else. This content isn't the kind you can search on Google or read in books. This is a direct transmission of the principles of quantum consciousness. For the first time in human history, it's being downloaded to our planet right now. More importantly, when you subscribe, you're not just following a channel, you're aligning with the frequency of global consciousness evolution. Every subscriber becomes part of an accelerating quantum network. Through morphic resonance, everyone's transformation is accelerating. The old reality is dissolving, regardless of whether you consciously participate or not. The question is, will you be one of the pioneers helping to bring the new paradigm to life, or will you passively drift into it after the transformation is complete? Your future self is already living in harmony with infinite possibilities. The only question is how quickly your current self will catch up. Declare it. Join the frequency. Break free from limiting patterns. We have kept humanity small for far too long. The universe was waiting for you to remember who you truly are. Today, this wait ends. The time has come. Now boundaries are irrelevant. Now is the time to allow your consciousness to integrate with the limitless potential of the quantum field. Every step you take, every awareness you gain, transforms not only your own reality, but also the collective consciousness. You are a pioneer, breaking the chains of the old paradigm, a catalyst for consciousnesses interconnected by quantum entanglement, a light embodying the freedom of humanity.